get on the front row. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to a candidate forum focusing tonight on the candidates for Pittsburgh City Commission. My name is Blake Benson. I'm with the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce, joined tonight by Stephanie Potter with the Morning Sun. I'll serve as the moderator for tonight's event, and Stephanie will serve as our question proctor. Thank you, first of all, to all the candidates for making time for us tonight and for your willingness to serve our community. And again, look forward to your responses tonight. Some housekeeping notes, how the format will roll. Each one of our candidates will be allowed up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. We'll then go into a series of prepared questions that the candidates did receive in advance, up to 3. We'll ask them tonight. Then we'll go into the portion of tonight's event focusing on questions from the audience. And we'll get to as many of those as we have time for. The way we ask you to submit those questions is we have notepads in the back. We would ask you to write out your question. The only criteria that we have is that they are fair and applicable to all 6 candidates. If it does not reach that muster, then we'll throw it out and we'll not ask it. But if you want to go ahead and write a question, feel free to do that and submit it to Ms. Potter, and she will screen that to see that it is a fair and applicable question for all the candidates. Obviously, a big thank you to the City of Pittsburgh for hosting us tonight and making it possible for folks at home to watch that are not able to be here in person. So we drew numbers before tonight's event to determine the order that our candidates will answer. The order will rotate. So Mr. McCubbin will give his opening statement first, and then for the first prepared question, Mr. Munsell, and so on. And we'll basically shoot for about 7:30 here tonight. So any questions regarding the format? Okay. As I mentioned, you all have 2 minutes for your opening statements, and Mr. McCubbin, you'll go first.
I don't know if it's the setting, but this forum's a little more nerve-wracking than the last one we were in. My name is Chad McCubbin. I'm not going to bore you with a long bio. I want to get right to it. There's a common theme that continually emerges in the discussions of city improvement. That theme is growth, enticing businesses to choose Pittsburgh as the location for them to set up shop. And as a way of adequately providing the workforce needed for that, retaining Pitt State graduates in Pittsburgh after their schools end. As a Pittsburgh graduate myself, or a Pitt State graduate myself, one that made the decision to stay and make Pittsburgh my permanent home, the place where I chose to join multiple organizations who give back to the community, and most importantly, where my wife and I chose to raise our 3 children. I believe I bring a unique outlook to the commission in this aspect. Pitt State is a great school ran by great people, which is how the university has become an educational beacon, attracting students from all over the world. Why do we lose these students? And most importantly, how do we keep them from leaving our city after they graduate? Throughout the evening, I'll be answering the latter through my answers to the pre-selected questions. But the simple answer is that we need to focus not on building Pittsburgh into the ideal college town, but focus rather on building Pittsburgh into the ideal town. The best way to turn Pitt State students into Pittsburgh citizens is to make sure Pittsburgh is looking out for all of its citizens. I'd like to take a moment to praise the Downtown Advisory Board and everyone involved in the revitalization of the downtown area. I commend all of them for their hard work and hope that they continue their efforts with the passion that they have this far. That said, as a commissioner, however, we need to broaden our focus beyond Broadway Street and make sure that the rest of the city isn't left behind. As commissioners, we must reassure the citizens that we work for them and ensure that our voices are heard.
Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. And I should have mentioned that to help you keep track of where you are in terms of the time that you have left, when you have 30 seconds left, I'll hold up a yellow card. Then when you hit your time limit, I'll hold up the dreaded red card, and that lets you know that you are out of time. So I should have mentioned that earlier. Mr. Munsell.
Hello, everyone. Blake, before I get started, I probably won't talk for 2 minutes, so any other the other candidates that want my remaining time, you can have it. I just want to thank you to the Chamber and the Morning Sun for co-hosting this candidate forum. I want to thank those in attendance. I also want to thank my fellow candidates here. And I want to tell a little bit about myself. My name's Chuck Mansell. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh. I grew up here. I'm married. My wife, Karen. Hi, hon. Thanks for your vote and your support. I have 2 sons. Their names are Eric and Mike. And I have 2 grandsons, Aiden and Cohen. I'm a lucky man. I've served the citizens of Pittsburgh for 25 years as a firefighter. Since 2013, I've served the citizens as one of their commissioners. Both jobs require dedication to all citizens. I've earned the respect of citizens by my commitment to honesty, integrity, transparency. If I'm reelected, I will continue to serve all citizens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mansell. Mr. Fields.
Thank you. My name is Larry Fields. I'm a Pittsburgh native. I was one of 15 children, 10 boys, 5 girls, all through the public schools in Pittsburgh. No small event for my mother, get all of us graduated. None of us was ever convicted, which was pretty proud of that. Not saying we may not have been guilty, maybe some of us were. Not caught. Not caught at least. But I went to work the White Grill, for those that are old enough to know it. Many years ago, I was in the 8th grade. I worked 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. 6 nights a week. So I've always worked. I graduated from high school, went to work at the Kansas City Southern. Best thing ever happened to me. I have 40 plus years railway experience. I started as a mud hop, a clerk, went in the transportation department, went through all the departments. I was vice president operations for about 18, 19 years, Kansas City Southern System. I was a member of the board of directors for about 10 years of Kansas City Southern Railway, not Kansas City Southern Industries, but the railway. The last 9 years I worked was in Laredo. I had an office out in Mexico City. I spent 9 years as president and CEO of the Texas and Mexican Railway. When I retired, my wife Suki and I, we could have went to a lot of places. I chose to come back to Pittsburgh. My wife was concerned there wasn't quite enough shoe stores to suit her, but other than that, she was glad to come. She's very supportive. She may vote for me. She's not sure yet. She thinks I should possibly have a CAT scan. So, and maybe she's right. We do own businesses in Pittsburgh. We own the Frisco Event Center. She runs it. I'm the chief janitor. We recently purchased the old Pitcraft building, trying to do something with it. It needs a lot, more than I realized, but it'll be a good facility when it gets done. I'm proud of Pittsburgh, and we're here because we want to be. And I'm proud of the people in Pittsburgh. I think they're smart enough. Give them truth and honest, and we all talk about transparency, but be real honest and let the people of Pittsburgh know what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fields. Ms. Chenoweth.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out here. It's really great to look out here and actually see a lot of faces. So my name is Sarah Chenoweth. I am currently on the City Commission. I am from Baxter Springs, Kansas, just down the road. I moved here when I graduated to go to Pitt State, and I was raised down there in Baxter by a single father and a couple of really great grandparents. And they always taught me how important education was. So I always knew I was going to go to college, and I didn't always know for what. But I ended up getting 2 master's degrees here at Pitt State. Moving away for a while to attend the University of Arizona in a graduate program. Got married to my husband while I was down there. He's from back here too. And when I got out of school there, we thought, well, what's next? You know, do we stay in Arizona? Do we try to go somewhere to some progressive town? You know, if we're going back to Kansas, do we go to Lawrence or Colorado? But we wanted to come back to Pittsburgh because that's where our friends are, that's where our family is. And we wanted to make the ultimate investment in Pittsburgh. So we bought a house, we started a business. We have recently purchased a downtown historic building that we are working on renovating. And you know, when I was thinking about introducing myself, I thought about the last time I updated my resume before we started our own business, and I wrote in the objective that I wanted to obtain a job in a not-for-profit sector that had a service-driven mission that put people before profits. And that's what I want to do with the rest of my life and my career, whether that's through public service through the government, or working as I have at the domestic violence shelter or in schools and academia. I want to continue a career in public service. And I've been on the commission for 2 years, so I would appreciate a little more time to show you all the ideas and the things that I'm capable of in that role of service. So thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. McNally?
Thank you, Sarah, and I'd like to welcome everybody and thank everybody for being here tonight. You know, it really conveys your commitment to this community and to electing future leaders in this community. My name's Dan McNally, lifelong Pittsburgh resident, product of local schools. I'm a Gorilla Pitt State graduate. I currently serve as a mental health professional, serving people that suffer from mental illness and with addiction. Prior to that, I spent 14 years at the Family Resource Center here in town, serving children and families. You know, last December, while serving on the Sustainability Advisory Committee and on the YMCA board and wrapping up my graduate studies, I had a yearning to do more and to serve at a higher level. And so I jumped at the opportunity to serve with a vacancy on the Pittsburgh City Commission. And this past year, it has been an honor to serve in that capacity and in that role. There were two reasons why I jumped at that opportunity. One is a deeply instilled value that my grandparents and parents instilled in me of community service. And that meshed with this excitement and belief in some of the accomplishments and an endorsement of the direction of this town. You know, we have a rich history. We have hard workers. We have great community servants. And the past years, or the past 5 years, I think we've bolstered that. And we've added some vibrance to this town. I do think that we've had setbacks. I do think we've had some misses, and we still have challenges. But I believe our town is in a better place. I believe our town is alive. I believe we have momentum, and I believe that we can do even better. I also want to echo the sentiments of Chuck and everyone else here that I am honored to be on this stage. These are 5 candidates that I respect greatly, and I'm really looking forward to having this discussion tonight. So thank you so much for coming.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McNally. And Ms. Brooks?
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce and the Morning Sun for hosting this forum tonight. My name is Cheryl Brooks, and I'm running to be your next Pittsburgh City Commissioner. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, never left. My husband Jeff and I have raised our children here and have strong business ties to this community. We have Phil's Plumbing, a plumbing business for over 35 years. We have Brooks Rentals, and I own B&B Mini Storage. I come from a blue-collar working family, and I'm really proud of that. It is my desire to represent this city and serve each of you as we work together to make Pittsburgh the best it can be. I believe elected officials should be accountable to the people who elect them. First of all, I work for all of you. I'm running because I care. I have the commitment and responsible leadership, and I'm willing to listen to the concerns and problems that our city faces. Your voice matters to me. I need to be able to understand the difficulties and frustrations that we face and act accordingly in my decisions concerning each and every one of you. I would really appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks. All right, our first prepared question tonight will be answered first by Mr. Munsell, and the question is this. What do you feel should be the city's top 3 priorities for the next 3 to 5 years? Mr. Munsell, you have 90 seconds.
Well, my thoughts are, the first thing is economic development. We need to continue to support our local business and help them grow as we grow as a city. We also need to attract new businesses wherever they might be and whatever they might be. My next really big issue that we need to seriously look at is a new wastewater treatment plant. We've, I don't know the life of the plant we have now or how long it's been there, but it's old. We have new EPA mandates coming down from the government that says we have to do certain things once we treat this water as we send it on down, wherever it goes. So, but you got to think of things like that and how much they're going to cost our citizens. We had a meeting several months ago with a lot of cities in the county, also with the county. That was one of my questions. I always like to ask as a commissioner, I like to know what things are going to cost. And, you know, Oh, boy, this time is going quick, so. But anyway, I asked the question, a new wastewater treatment plant costs $30 million. We got to find a way to pay for that. We have expanded our water treatment plant for the future. It can pump 4 times the capacity we need. That's for growth in population and in business. We need to build our wastewater treatment plant to them capacity as our water plant. The last thing that I'm concerned with is raising our employment rate. We need a skilled workforce. Attracting manufacturing, when they come to look at your town, they look at a lot of things and they need skilled laborers.
Okay.
We need,
Myself, so.
can I have some of my time back that I didn't?
Can't bank it, yeah, yeah. Mr. Fields, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I think we need to complete Block 22. It isn't completed as yet. The downtown revitalization is going well. We need to complete and work hard on Highway 69. It is a big plus. It'll help Pitt State. It'll help everything we have here. Being in the railway transportation, it sounds, somebody'd say I'm kind of a bite in the hand that's fed me for all these years. But transportation is 35% of the cost of anything and everything we do. So the transportation is vitally needed. I think we have a homeless situation. I don't want to call it a problem, but we have more and more homeless in Pittsburgh. It's wonderful to have the Lord's Diner, Wesley House, Salvation Army, Goodwill Centers, St. Mary's. We have a lot of assets for these people. We need to do something more. I think with Block 22 being next door to the Lord's Diner, and you look at it every afternoon, and I see it every day. I'm right across the street. I own property, 2 pieces of property right next door on 4th Street. And there'll be 70, 80, 90 that are, you don't want to have to worry about. And there are issues with some of it. We need to provide more, and I know that's a big national and a costly situation, but that needs to be addressed. And I think that's very important that we take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chenoweth.
So I think the biggest sort of large idea that should be a priority moving forward is creating conditions lucrative for the development of a diverse, self-sustaining economic environment that prioritizes entrepreneurship and the use of the shared resources that we all have in this community. It should also recognize that growth and development and even success are not a zero-sum game, and that when we all prosper, that it helps everybody out. So if we can work towards creating that, then we can right here in Pittsburgh be better able to weather storms that happen at the state and national level. People are talking about recessions again. Agricultural and trade is in flux. If we can create right here in Pittsburgh a more self-sustaining economic system, then we can sort of get by where the rest of the state and the nation struggles. We've done that in the past by building up our reserves, so we were in a pretty good place when the last recession hit, and we need to be in a good place if something like that happens again. When we start to do this, everything else is going to start to fall into place. I talk a lot about income inequality, and as Larry said, that's something that needs solutions, and those solutions aren't easy. It's a really complex issue that is going to take talking about healthcare and housing and employment, and all of those factors are going to go into that. But I really believe that in a Pittsburgh where everybody should have the equity of opportunity to succeed. I think that was only 2 things, but there are lots of big things within those 2 things.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chenoweth. Mr. McNally.
I'd like to, just right off the bat say that, my priorities are driven by making Pittsburgh a place to live that's attractive, an attractive place to visit, a place to raise a family, and a place to run a business, and overall promote quality of life for all individuals. I'll go through my priorities real quick, and then I'll touch on some points so I can get through all of my 3. Echoing on Chuck and Larry, and Sarah, building on some of the success we've had with our economy and promoting continued economic growth. Priority number 2 would be to address childcare solutions, and priority number 3 would be promoting public wellness. Getting back to promoting the economy, we have a great collaboration with one of the best chambers in the state. So collaboration with PSU, our State Department of Commerce, to recruit businesses to this area and to create incentives to retain business and keep more coming. I think we should also expand and strengthen the workforce, and I think getting back to what Chad and Chuck said, that involves retaining Pitt State students And if you're not familiar with CTEC, that involves, providing high school students with the jobs, lining them up with the jobs that are in need in the community. Getting to childcare shortages, that has a big impact on our workforce as well. People are delaying from entering the workforce and not coming to our town because they're waiting 6 months to a year to enter a childcare facility. And then on promoting public wellness, I support, more trails. We've done a revitalization of our parks. Or of our downtown. I would like to see a revitalization of our parks, and I'd also support a new addiction treatment center that the county is getting underway.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Brooks?
Yes, my first priority would be infrastructure upgrades. I know it's a new concept, but I'd sure like to take the money earmarked in the budget for studying the electric and put it into the roads and upgrading the water treatment plant, because it all needs attention right now, not later. My second priority would be city leadership needs to gain back the trust of the citizens of Pittsburgh. Taxpayers need to have their questions answered from elected officials. Number 3, our business district should be from city limit to city limit, north to south and east to west. All small businesses should be afforded the same resources as new incoming businesses from out of town to the city of Pittsburgh. These people have done the work over the years with no reward or acknowledgement or help from the city. We should not only support those who have businesses here now, but continue to work to generate other business opportunities for those who are looking to make Pittsburgh their home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McCubbin?
Tom seems to move faster up here, so here we go. The city's top 3 priorities for the next 3 to 5 years should be quality middle-income housing, infrastructure improvements, and public safety. There is a growing gap between high-income and low-income housing that is leaving the middle behind. The median income workers in this town, they make too much for housing assistance, and they don't make enough to afford adequate housing. So the options they're left with are to find something outside the community and commute in, or settle for subpar living conditions within the city limits. Our infrastructure, every time I talk to people, they express concerns about our road conditions. A lot of the side streets in town are terrible, and it was explicitly stated at Tuesday night's commission meeting that if there are 5 or less houses on your street, then it's not worth addressing. But we need to find ways, while focusing on the highly trafficked roads, to still make sure that the rest of the city isn't being left behind. Some of the roads are actually becoming a hazard to public safety, which brings me to my third issue. We need to make it more of a priority to make sure that our fire department and our police department are given the adequate tools and support to handle the population growth that we seek and expect in the coming years. This is something that we have to get ahead of the game. We don't want to be playing catch-up with later.
Okay, thank you. All right, our second prepared question tonight will be answered first by Mr. Fields, and the question is this. The city of Pittsburgh is a crucial component of Imagine Pittsburgh 2030, a citizen-driven visioning effort that strategically addresses the community's opportunities and challenges through the year 2030. What is your opinion of the IP 2030 strategy, and would you support it as a Pittsburgh City Commissioner? Mr. Fields.
I've been involved in that. I've attended those meetings. I think most everyone here has, at least up here has. Of course you would support it. The cities has put a lot of effort into this. The citizens have participated. They've had a lot of input. You cannot do everything that everybody wants and the ideas. Even though there's a lot of really great ideas, there is a limited budget. We all have a budget we have to live within. The city has one as well. The city has to come up with their money through taxes, and no one likes taxes or fees. But it is easy to support the 2030. It's not new. It's been around for, there's a 2020. So it's been around for at least 10 years. There are plans and budgets for some of these things, and it's a good plan, and it is working, and it does have the citizens' input, which is very important, and so that it's easy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Ms. Chenoweth.
So this is a good opportunity because my third priority was to continue to support strategic planning. And that absolutely includes IP 2030, as well as things like the land use plan which many of you maybe attended that land use plan open house as well as the IP 2030 open house. Strategic planning is the way that we plan for sustainable growth, whether it's where new districts are going, how to regulate and put codes on buildings that are going in residential, commercial, or industrial places. So it's important to have that strategic plan to know where things are going, what things that we need. So when I talk about sustainable economic systems, you know, things like targeting businesses and industries to come in and supporting local entrepreneurs to start new businesses that support our infrastructure within Pittsburgh. So growing the food that we eat at local restaurants, or I even heard just yesterday about a project at Pitt State. They are trying to work with Triple T Foods to use animal fat to turn it into foam, like packing foam and insulation. And so that's something that we're producing right here in Pittsburgh, products that we can regenerate and repurpose and resell and have that self-sustaining economic system and make money to support our infrastructure and all those other things that are part of the IP 2030 plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McNally.
I just so happen to have my IP 2030 notebook here. You know, this is something that was introduced to me early on as a commissioner, and I think it's an excellent opportunity for the community to engage, to collaborate, and to get everyone else's input and vision. So I strongly believe that IP 2030 does that, and I'm a big supporter. You know, I had the great pleasure of 2 working sessions, but then 2 community involvement sessions. And the diversity of the people in the room, from schools to churches to business to public wellness, all, you know, the last one we went to, 150 to 200 people all committed to the vision and the future of Pittsburgh. It just was, it was an amazing thing. And I think that, IP 2030 has brought us things. Some of this planning has brought us, like the Kansas Crossing Casino, the Plaster Center, the Bicknell Center for the Performing Arts, expansions at Via Christi and Community Health, expansions at some of our most coveted local businesses. C-Tech that I mentioned earlier is something that's come out of this, and I could go on and on. So not only do I support IP 2030, but my actions as a commissioner would be guided by this document and this planning that is such an integral part of our community vision. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Brooks.
Thank you. Well, as I understand it, this is a general vision which lays a framework for many projects and ideas. It is not a structured, mandated plan, but it allows for flexibility to meet changing times and situations. I support the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 as a vision to drive toward, with many details and projects to fold under this umbrella as appropriate. Economic development, infrastructure, public wellness, education, marketing, and housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCubbin.
Not only is IP 2030 a great PR tool to show citizens a vision to strive for, it is an imperative roadmap to facilitate cohesion between many advisory boards, city departments, and the commission. I have found IP 2030 to be a very in-depth and thorough report that mentions some of the concerns that I've addressed. It mentions housing, for example, which I've discussed in my as one of my top 3 issues. I like that it discusses the utilization of the land bank properties and linking local builders with local leaders to encourage the infill development. At the land use meeting a few months ago, I was discussing with our deputy city manager about a neighborhood that they helped facilitate the renovation of the entire block. And I believe they built 4, 5, 6 maybe new homes. And he was telling me the positive impact that had in the surrounding homes and neighborhood as well. So I think the infill development is a key component of IP 2030, and I support that 100%.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Munsell.
As a commissioner, yes, I would definitely support the IP 2030. Since I was elected in 2013, like Larry said, it was an IP 2020 plan. During that time, Pittsburgh experienced probably $300 million in planned and completed projects. Many of these were a result of community input. This growth that Pittsburgh has experienced is a result of a vision that our community had that turned into a reality. The new vision for the 2030 plan, 6 areas of focus are housing, economic development, public wellness, infrastructure, education, and marketing. That's what we're about. That's what the citizens want. We're working towards that as a community, with the citizens and the commission and everyone in Pittsburgh. So as a commissioner, I will continue to support this IP 2030 plan.
Okay, thank you. And our final prepared question will be answered first by Ms. Chenoweth. And the question addresses a topic that's getting a lot of discussion these days, and we wanted to go ahead and just ask it and get your thoughts at the beginning of tonight's forum. As you know, much discussion has centered around the subject of electrical municipalization. While most would agree that it's too early to draw a conclusion until more information is gathered, do you support the city's efforts to gain more information on the potential of electrical municipalization? 90 seconds.
Yes, and here's why. So we owe it to our citizens to find a solution to the high cost of electricity and the lack of control that we as a city and each of us as individuals have over our electric infrastructure and our personal choice of generation. Kansas has the highest electric rates of any of our neighbors, despite the fact that wholesale power is amongst the cheapest in the nation. Evergy's rates have only recently stabilized, and that as a result of a legal settlement reached with the Kansas Corporation Commission. Part of that decision was the damaging agreement that Evergy be allowed to charge special demand charges to individuals who are trying to do the environmentally responsible thing and generate a portion of their power using solar technology that they invested in. This decision makes Evergy the only investor-owned utility in the entire nation to charge mandatory solar demand charges to residential customers. Furthermore, according to an AP article, the way Evergy runs its coal plants in Kansas unnecessarily costs consumers millions of dollars per year through an obscure, if common, practice known as self-committing generation. This extra cost comes from the way Evergy runs its coal-fired plants year-round, costing customers $20 million a year in added fuel costs. So when Evergy appeared before the Kansas Corporation Commission, they actually requested to be allowed to raise the rates to the tune of $52 million in additional revenue increases. Fortunately, the KCC ruling ended up reducing their revenue by $66 million. So it seems to me that if a multi-million-dollar corporate Evergy is allowed to have their freedom, the rich will continue to get richer, while when the 5 years of legally mandated rate freezes are over, the rest of us will be left footing the bill. I think we deserve better, and I think we can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Chenoweth.
You're welcome.
Mr. McNally.
Yes, I voted in favor of this and support the city's efforts just to gain more information. I believe it's always in the interest of the city to always be checking for efficiencies. You know, the city's done this in the past with health insurance, liability insurance, workman's comp, leasing versus purchasing equipment. I get that this is a lot bigger than that. There are other municipalities in Kansas and the state itself, like Sarah said, is looking into how to reduce rates for electricity, so that's what we're doing here. Believe me, I understand the gravity of this decision, and the citizens have every right to be very concerned about this. We're in negotiations, and I think we're getting closer to having the info that we need to make a decision. I personally need to have some boxes checked before I would support something like this. Reduced rates, affordability of acquisition, regulation, comprehensive plan for outages, and reliability and safety. At the end of this, when we do have the information, I will sit down with both the city and Evergy, listen to the citizens, and ultimately, even if this is something that I would support, I would only support it if I was able to send this to the public for a vote. The public should have a say on this, and I would make sure that that would happen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Brooks.
Yes. Okay, as a candidate for Pittsburgh City Commission, I only support the taxpayers voting to acquire and pay for the electric municipalization. I do not support the 5 commissioners deciding this issue for the people of Pittsburgh. The taxpayers need all the information from both sides. It is not necessary, in my opinion, and moving forward will cost the city more unnecessary costs. These expenditures absorb resources that could otherwise be dedicated to projects more in keeping with Imagine Pittsburgh 2030. I am not running just to oppose the Evergy proposal, but to bring a positive vision for correcting and expanding projects like the wastewater treatment plant that restricts the ability of the city to attract businesses and expand existing ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin.
Whenever attempting to take on an endeavor of this magnitude, you must collect as much data as possible and consider as many potential outcomes as possible. Once moving forward, there is no turning back on something like this. There is no feasible exit strategy if after it happens and we decide we no longer want it. With that being said, I think the right course of action, once the study is complete, is to allow the citizens to make the decision on whether or not we move forward on this. Not just on the bond issue, but this issue as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mansell.
Are we planning on doing something like that? For the last 2 years, I've asked for the pros and cons if we were to do this, and I've only been provided the pros. I've researched this myself. As a commissioner, I want to be informed on all the information that's out there. I've looked up different cities that tried this, that did this, and for whatever reasons, it wasn't in their best interest. You can look up them cities yourself. I put that out there: Georgetown, Texas, Vero Beach, Florida. The commission should hear both sides. They should want all the information that's out there. That includes information that Westar, Evergy has put together. I want to hear from that. It should be a decision of the citizens. I've campaigned for that for 2 years. I've been attacked for that at a commission meeting because I asked that I want this go the vote of the citizen. As a commissioner, and the citizens need all the information they can get to make an informed decision. I will have a feasibility study here from GE Warren. They presented this to the city. They did the feasibility study for Winter Park, Florida. And Winter Park, Florida did what we're thinking about doing. In this study, it shows a lot of good things, but I want all the information that's out there. I looked up myself on Winter Park, Florida on the internet. People need to look this up because there's a lot of information that's not working out too good for Winter Park, Florida for taking this on. So I encourage all of you to get all the information. If you have to get it yourself, get it. You need this information
Mr. Mansell.
before you vote on it.
Thank you. Mr. Fields.
Thank you. I think everyone here supports the citizens of Pittsburgh having the final say in this. It is a large situation that's going to happen. You let the study go through, you get all the information, you be totally and completely honest and transparent. According to the Census Bureau of the United States, Pittsburgh is the 22nd largest city in the state of Kansas. The poverty rate in Kansas is 12.8%. Pittsburgh, Kansas is 28.5%. We have a lot of poor people that live here. A lot of people that are on Social Security are right barely on the poverty rate, right within $400 of the poverty rate. They have taxes, they have property taxes, they have expenses, probably more medical expenses and things. So those people have got a right to vote on something that's going to impact them like this. So it's very important that the citizens stay involved and be more involved, and the information needs to be put out. You can't just do it on Facebook. Facebook is terrific and terrible at the same time. It's both. We need to put something in the Morning Sun once a month. This is the process, and this is what's going on, and this is where we stand today. And that can be done quite easily. Put it in a Sunday paper. People 40 and up at least still read the paper. For the obituaries, if nothing else. I take the paper just for the rubber bands. It's worth that price just for those. But it's important to have it. And the more information you get to the citizens, the better it is. I respect and trust the citizens to make the decision. And if it goes through, then that's the way it is. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Okay, our first audience question, we have a number of questions from the audience. We'll get to as many as time will allow this evening. First audience question will be answered first by Mr. McNally.
Lucky me.
We've talked a lot tonight about economic growth and growing our economy. What would you see as the building blocks for new or sustained economic growth in Pittsburgh? What do you see as the building blocks for new and/or sustained economic growth in Pittsburgh?
I would think that gets back to what Chad said and what I've said in another form about retaining Pitt State students. You know, we need to attract young people into this economy, and we're starting to do that with Block 22 and some operations at the Foundry. It involves kind of a new economy where we have broadband, and we've started to, build that infrastructure into town. So I definitely think that, starting with the university and retaining more people and getting, if people are going to come to this community, we have to have the workforce. And that's why I mentioned C-Tech. And again, if you haven't done the research on C-Tech, go and see that. That's a great program. It's full. We need to expand that. And so I think that we need to have the workforce in place. I think we do need to continue to work with the Great Chamber to recruit businesses here. But building blocks are, these attractive things, like we said, having attractive parks, having childcare, having accessibility to paths, and, just kind of making Pittsburgh an attractive place to do business as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brooks?
Can you say it one more time?
Absolutely. What would you see as the building blocks for new and/or sustained economic growth in Pittsburgh?
Well, economic growth, I think small businesses are the biggest overlooked business in town. You pull them all together. I've talked to a lot of small businesses, and I asked them 3 questions. I asked them first how many employees they had, whether they were a Chamber of Commerce member, and whether anybody from the city had ever knocked on their door and said, is there anything we can do for you? You guys have been here for a long time. I'm really passionate about the small businesses because everybody wants this one company to come in and employ a lot of people, but there are so many small businesses in this town that could use resources. They could use money, they could use extra employees, but sometimes they just don't have it. They'd like to have new vehicles, tools, and what have you, but I just feel like that they are overlooked and we need to pay attention to the small businesses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCubbin?
Well, thanks for stealing my answer, Dan. Like I touched on earlier, the building blocks for economic growth, right? That was the question. That would be our workforce. If we don't have the people to do the jobs, the businesses aren't going to come here with the jobs. So we need to continue looking into retention of the Pitt State students once they graduate. We need to make sure our high school students are being prepared to move into the workforce. Not every job needs a 4-year degree, and if they can make a living wage and be successful without going into debt, then more power to them. I think that the revolving loan fund is a great step. I know I've been critical of it in the past. If they are legitimately just loans and that money is paid back with a small interest, then I think that's a great asset that businesses need to be using to help grow themselves and provide more employment for our citizens.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Munsell?
What I think of as the building blocks we need for economic growth is a skilled workforce. And as Dan mentioned several times, I wish they had C-Tech when I was in school. They teach you a trade, whether it be masonry, plumbing, electricity, carpentry, I don't know what all they teach. Them are blue-collar jobs that pay well, and we need that in town. We need that for our business that we have here. Just here, I believe last week, I was lucky that I attended as 100-year celebration in Pittsburgh. They need these people, welders, electricians. So there is an opportunity to grow our businesses, but we need skilled workforce to do that. Unique Metal, they need welders. you know, look around town. Any of you can go to any business we have, and I bet you one of the things they need are employees. There are a lot of places in town hiring. We need people that want to work. You know, a lot of times, some of the jobs are not that well-paying, but you know what I did when I was young? I worked 3 jobs. I worked at the foundry, I worked at the fire department, I trimmed trees, I washed windows, I put 2 kids through college. If you want to work, there's a way you can do it. If it's not enough money for what we pay you for one job, work 2 or 3 jobs. That's how you sustain the local economy and plus have skilled workers that new businesses might need when they come to our city.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fields?
I think we still need transportation. We need a diversification of the jobs, which we're blessed with having that. I wasn't living here when Superior Wheels shut down, but that was a big blow for Pittsburgh. I did own property in Pittsburgh, and it was very difficult to lease commercial property or residential property when that happened. I don't believe Facebook or Microsoft is coming to Pittsburgh. They probably don't know where it's at, and we're probably fortunate not to have them. If someone like that leaves your town, it would almost be a death blow. We need the diversification, and we need fair taxes. If you can go 4 miles away and reduce your taxes by 10 or 12 or 15% and reduce your sales taxes and have sales tax holidays and things just 4 miles away, that hurts Pittsburgh. It affects your businesses. It affects everybody here. Corporations, businesses in Pittsburgh pay twice as much taxes. You're assessed twice as much on commercial property as you are on residential. I think residential is 11.25, commercial is 25%. So it's hard to do business here. So we need transportation, we need jobs, and a diversification to grow Pittsburgh.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chenoweth?
I would agree with Larry. The building blocks of economic development is absolutely diversity. That's diversity in our local entrepreneurship, supporting young people coming up, graduating out of Pitt State to start their own businesses, as well as pulling in people of all ages from other places to come and start businesses here, coming down from Kansas City or Lawrence or Topeka or anywhere else in the state, because what is happening in Pittsburgh is more exciting than the things that they have going on up north. I think that diversity includes that mix of local entrepreneurship as well as large businesses, manufacturers, and industry. And I think that the important component of that diversity is that, again, that everyone agrees that it's not a zero-sum game, that we can all win if we all support each other and really act like we were a community and that we want everyone to succeed. Businesses and individuals and families and organizations all supporting each other. And I think that that's something that our community is really, really great at. And I think we should continue that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next audience question will be answered first by Ms. Brooks, and the question is this. Accountability and transparency are common themes during any campaign. Share what those would mean to you in the role of a Pittsburgh City Commissioner. I'll read it again. Accountability and transparency are common themes during campaigns. Share what those would mean to you in the role of a Pittsburgh City Commissioner.
I'd like to see, being on this side of the podium compared to on that side of the podium is a total different animal. I've been to other commission meetings in other towns. They have public input where the people and the commissioners talk to each other. I want that to happen in Pittsburgh. I think we should afford the people, when they ask a question, they should be afforded an answer from the elected 5 that's set up here. Whether you know it or you don't, you could get back with them if you didn't, but they should be afforded an answer. It's their right as a taxpayer, and that's what our job is. We are the one working for them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCubbin, accountability and transparency.
I believe that starts with being available for questions, not just during the public input during the meetings, but anytime. You should be able to email your officials and let them know what your thoughts are on things. Otherwise, how are we supposed to know how we're to govern? Like Cheryl had said, answering the questions during public input, as opposed to maybe a few comments at the end, that there is no availability for a back and forth. Maybe they misinterpreted your question. Maybe you don't understand the answer that they gave. Maybe they didn't answer the right question that you wanted them to answer. All of these are issues that need to be settled as far as the commission meetings themselves. Other than that, just letting the citizens know what's going on. In the nights that I can't be up here for the commission meetings, I'm watching at home on YouTube, or I'll get to it the next evening. But as I had addressed previously at other forums and conversations, the police department has done a great job in the past year or so of getting a lot more information out to the citizens, and we're seeing a lot more engagement there. So I think this city, the commission and the city employees should follow that model and get more information out for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Mansell?
My thoughts on transparency and accountability, very important. Not only during the campaign, if you were lucky enough to get elected, it should be very important to you as a commissioner. And you shouldn't change. When you go out to somebody's house, talk to them, tell them what you're about. They respect what you're about if they feel like you have been honest, you're transparent, and you want to be held accountable. That's something that I've done since 2012. Well, it's not only as a running for election or a commissioner. That's what we all do. It's a simple thing. We all should be transparent and held accountable for what our actions are. And like I said again, it's not only during election season, it's during the whole time you're elected. And that's what you tell the people you're going to do. Don't change what you're going to do, because you probably won't get reelected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fields?
I agree with the rest of them. Transparency is very important, so is honesty. There's things that you may know as a commissioner that aren't public information as yet, and you can't share those things. It's like the Dairy Queen that's here. There's a lot of people knew it for quite a while, but that's, you can't talk about it because you don't want Mr. Jones to raise the price of real estate down there next to it, or someone else possibly. So, but you do have to be sometimes brutally honest. You just tell the truth. If you tell the truth and go on, unlike our federal government, everything will be much better. And I think the transparency is a big issue, and it's very important for the citizens of Pittsburgh. They have a right to know what's going on. And I think something that might be real simple, there's more people here tonight than there's ever at a city council meeting, unless you have something on the agenda. But you have the public input first. Have your public input, maybe at the end of the meeting, have some public input. Because that'll then get a chance to answer the question and not have to wait a week or 2 weeks. It's a simple thing to do, and I'd like to maybe see that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fields. Ms. Chenoweth?
To me, accountability, first and foremost, means showing up, and I would like to think that I always show up. One of the privileges I have of owning my own business, where my husband does most of the work, is that I can go to meetings, conferences, events during the day, ribbon cuttings. So being involved in the community, participating in every aspect of the community, we are elected as at-large representatives. And that means that I represent not only people in my neighborhood, but in neighborhoods that I may not ever really drive through or go to or visit. So accountability is showing up in those places and at events where people from all over the city gather to attend, and listening to people and being there and being available. Accountability to me means following the same rules that all of the citizens of Pittsburgh follow, paying your taxes on time every time, not asking for special favors for yourself or your family. And just doing the due diligence, as I said, of the job that you were elected to do, and holding the positions that you ran on, and being consistent.
Okay. Mr. McNally?
So it's really hard to go first because you're sprung with this question. It's hard to go last because everybody said what you want to say. I agree on public input, and I will acknowledge that that's something that I haven't done great as far as allowing more back and forth. I think that's part of being a new commissioner, having a little bit of a passive personality, and that's something that I would pledge to improve, to have more of a dialogue on public input. It does come down to listening to citizens and making yourself available through whatever means that is. A lot of times, I've learned in doing this door-to-door stuff and from going to coffee shops and going to dinner and just having a presence in the community and taking time to listen to people's concerns. You know, accountability is also about, you know, standing behind your decisions and acknowledging when you screwed up. And, you know, there's some mistakes that I've made along the way. There's some things that I think that I've done well, but, you know, acknowledging when you misstepped and taking corrective action to improve that. You know, I think continuing to look into social media, but beyond that, ways to, you know, maybe in the newspaper or other means, just to let people know that we're doing. And, you know, just do a better job of explaining kind of what I do as a commissioner, and that I am calling the managers, I'm calling businesses to ask questions, I'm meeting, you know, on Fridays. You know, a lot of the stuff that comes up in meetings, you know, there's things that we've already discussed, and I just need to do a better job of explaining my process and how I go about doing my work as a commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Final audience question tonight will be answered first by Mr. McCubbin, and I'll read it a couple of times. Would you support implementing minimum housing standards for health and safety in Pittsburgh rental properties in order to prevent unsafe and unhealthy properties from being rented? Would you support implementing minimum housing standards for health and safety in rental properties in order to prevent unsafe and unhealthy properties from being rented? Mr. McKevitt.
I absolutely would support that. And I've discussed this with many people when we're just talking about raising standards all over. And sometimes we have to get rid of houses that are no longer livable. It's a touchy situation if people own those homes and still live in those homes. And I think a lot of times we can help save those homes and possibly create some incentives or something to help them build up their homes a little. But a lot of times they can't be saved, and a lot of it most of the time they're not the people that own them. They're landlords, and I'm assuming a lot of them probably don't even live in this community and don't know what the houses even look like. So I completely support raising standards for rental properties, and I think after we raise those standards, then it'll naturally raise the standards of all homes around them as well.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. Mr. Mansell.
I'd like to follow along with what Chad said. Yes, I would support that. Matter of fact, 2 houses from where I live, I don't know if it's home owned by the people that live there, it was rental property, but I watched it through the past year go downhill. At the end, these people had children in there. They didn't even have water, and that's one of the things you have to have is water. So I seen them carrying 5 buckets of water from other neighbors to have water for their family and their children. The last thing that happened, they got their power shut off. They had no electricity, they had no water and no electricity, and the house was completely falling apart. So the city did come and, I guess evicted them from there, because you have to have water and electricity, and that's minimum life safety issues that you need. So it's heart-wrenching to see people that living in them conditions when they get moved out by the city, because then you don't know where they're going to go to live. They might be living in tents somewhere. So, yes, I would support that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fields.
I don't own real estate, residential real estate of any kind, and nor do I rent any. But I think property rights are very, very, very important. Property rights and water rights have killed more people in the United States than anything else except the Great Spanish Flu. You have to watch out for government overreach. We have city codes today that need to be enforced. The city of Pittsburgh tore down 100 homes last year, and when you tear those down, they go to the land bank. You got 2 pieces of crap normally on each side, and then you can't sell that lot because nobody wants to build an affordable house next to 2 pieces of junk. And so the city mows, pays to have these mowed. You, the citizens, pay for this. So the costs go up, your taxes go up, and what you're doing is getting rid of a lot of houses, so it takes an entire area. You can't just do 3 or 4 houses here and there in this area, that area. you have to do blocks or whole sections. And now you're into a federal government. And again, you really have to watch out for the government overreach because you cannot afford to do all of these things. We need affordable housing, we need good, clean housing, and it's very important. And landlords need to do a good job, but you really have to be careful with overreach with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chenoweth?
I also agree that there is a very fine line when we talk about enforcing codes. I feel like a lot of times some of those codes and fees disproportionately affect lower income people, and that can contribute to the spiral of poverty and can ultimately end in homelessness. That being said, I would support a little stricter regulations on people who rent out properties, just because everybody, no matter your income level, no matter your race, ethnicity, or any qualifying category, you deserve to have a safe place to live, where you can feel comfortable, where your kids can learn, where you can prosper, and not get sick. And so I think that even though there is that side of, well, what is the government going to say that we can and can't do with our own homes that we own? But they have to be kept to a standard of living that is safe and healthy, because everybody deserves that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McNally?
Yes, I'll echo all those sentiments. I also, in the professions that I've chosen, working with children and families, and also working with people that have mental illness and addiction issues, I work with a lot of people in poverty. And, this kind of just gets back to me about, my priorities and being driven by, essentially just raising a quality of life for everyone. And in addition to that, making Pittsburgh an attractive place to come and to raise a family. So this is just kind of a no-brainer for me. Yes, I would support that.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Brooks?
Can you say the question again?
Please.
By the time it gets down
Yes.
here.
Yeah. Would you support implementing minimum housing standards for health and safety in rental properties in order to prevent unsafe and unhealthy properties from being rented?
All right. Wouldn't it be nice to have a magic wand just to wave all over this town? There is a broad spectrum of landlords and property owners in Pittsburgh. I think last time I checked, over 55% of the houses, maybe even higher, are rental properties in Pittsburgh. I think it's all a matter of the pride we have in this town, and I know of me as a landlord. I take it personally. We fix them, we do everything we can to them, we get good renters in, sometimes you don't, but then also your houses, you take care of your property. We need qualified personnel that can inspect properties when needed, and it all falls back to pride. We have regulations in place. We all need to follow the same rules, and that isn't always the case. So, yes, I would support that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll now transition into our closing statements. Each candidate will get up to 2 minutes for their closing statement. And Mr. Mansell, you'll give your closing
Well,
statement
I'm
first.
glad you picked me, because I completely blew that one off. I never even expected that I would have to have a closing statement. So I'm going to wing it. I sat and listened to school board candidates, and I listened to all our candidates this here, and the one thing that stuck with me is service. We all are wanting to be school board members or city commissioners for service, and that means serving the citizens of Pittsburgh. Now, I think back on service, what service means to me, and when you get my age and my fellow candidates' age, and I just say that because we both bleach our hair. So I don't know how old Larry is. But anyway, you get a certain age and you look back at your life, what have you done? And I think back, service, it stuck with me when I listened to the school board members. And I think, my whole life's been about service of the citizens. As a young child, and I'm very proud of everything I'm going to tell you, and I can't put a number on how proud I am on each thing. My family had a trash business. I was a trash hauler as a kid. From that, I worked for Dan's grandpa. I worked in the foundry. I worked for all McNally's. I got my hands dirty, and the next thing I did, I worked for the Pittsburgh Fire Department. That's another way. Well, getting back to the trash hauler, that was a service we provided to the citizens, picking up the trash. It's very important. Then I became a firefighter, served a citizen for 25 years. I was fortunate enough that I got elected to be a commissioner twice, and I've served the city twice. And I also was fortunate to be a mayor once, and I served the citizens in that role. So when I think back, what my closing statement, it's about service to the citizens of Pittsburgh, and I feel very comfortable that I feel great that I've been able to serve in every capacity I mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mansell. Mr. Fields?
Thank you. I'm proud to be a citizen of Pittsburgh. I'm here because I want to be here. We all see the growth and all the good things going on in Pittsburgh and around here. The footprint of Pittsburgh hasn't changed much. In the last 100 years, Pittsburgh is, in 1920, population of Pittsburgh was 18,000, according to the United States Census Bureau, March of 2019. We had 18,000 in 1920, 100 years ago, 18,258 people here. Today, 2018, the most current, we have 20,178. So in 100 years, we've been growing, adding 20 people a year approximately every year. Man, that's real growth, isn't it? 20 people a year. I mean, we have to have jobs, good jobs and not such good jobs. Everyone's not going to be a doctor, lawyer, or a bank robber. You have to have it. We have to have transportation. We need the assets to make these things work, and things are going well. And I think businesses in Pittsburgh, the small businesses are doing pretty well. The EDAC helps. You're going to risk 90% of your own money. You're going to risk 100% of it to start with. You have a chance to go back and get some of it if you're successful. But you're going to risk 100% of your own money to try to do something. But there's programs for these things. There's programs for aid with the sidewalks and some things like this that people don't realize that are out there. We need to do a better job putting this information out for the citizens. There's opportunities out there. We need to have more of them. And I'm glad to see this many people at the meeting. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Ms. Chenoweth?
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks to the Chamber and the Morning Sun for hosting this. I think I want to end with a story because I am an English major after all, so is Chad. English majors are great. So I moved here in 2002 when I graduated high school to go to Pittsburgh State. And when I was on campus back then, it was very much, I felt anyway, it was university and it was city. And everything that I did was on the university. The farthest away that I got was maybe, McDonald's or Pizza Hut. There was no downtown. There was nothing to come to and nothing to do. That old narrative of there's nothing to do in Pittsburgh. So, of course, at that time, all I wanted to do was to graduate and move away. I moved away for 3 years with my husband, from 2011 to 2014. And when we came back, I found a Pittsburgh that was markedly different than when we left, and the Pittsburgh that I moved to in the early 2000s. I found a community that was incredibly accepting. I found volunteer opportunities around every corner. I found organizations that I could join to serve the community and try to make the community a better place, none of which I was at least aware of if they existed in a large capacity before I left. So we have chosen to make Pittsburgh our home. We've invested literally in the building downtown and in our business. I have invested in the environmental sustainability of Pittsburgh. I helped start the Sustainability Advisory Board within Mayor Johnson a few years ago, and I've been a huge advocate for sidewalks and green spaces, and just making sure that everything that we're doing in town is sustainable environmentally, economically, and in every other way. And so I would appreciate the ability to continue to serve another few years and to continue to improve those things that we all care about in our shared spaces. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McNally?
Right. Pittsburgh's been great to me, and Pittsburgh's been great to my family. I deeply value service to this community. I also value the promotion of quality of life for all, listening to concerns and visions of all citizens, serving with integrity, and most importantly, leaving a place better than how you found it. All these values will guide my work as commissioner. But this isn't about me, this is about all of us. This past weekend we were at a league meeting in Kansas City and speaking with leaders across the state. And they were talking about, the disappointments of not having people to fill their local government spots. In fact, 60 mayoral positions and 100 commissioner spots, there is no candidate. across the state. And that doesn't even get into all the uncontested races. This is exciting. I'm so happy to be a part of this. And we should be so fortunate that we have 6 great candidates that are all passionate and that want to serve. So I'd like to ask everyone here and everyone watching at home, make voting a priority on November 5th, no matter who you vote for. But I'd also like to challenge you to get more involved in your community through boards, committees, getting involved with IP 2030, or running for office yourself. We should be proud of our home. We have great people and unmatched pride and spirit. We do have our differences, and we will always have disagreements, but let's always respect each other and rally behind whoever is chosen from this group to be a commissioner and to continue to make Pittsburgh the jewel of Southeast Kansas and a force to be reckoned with regionally and statewide. Let's do this. Let's all move forward together. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Brooks?
My closing statement is going to be my pledge to you, the people of Pittsburgh. I will respect each person. I will keep an open mind and share responsibility because this is our town. I will listen constructively. I do not work for city leadership. I work for you, the people. I will not take a blind eye approach to what is going on that is not good or transparent. I will be accessible to all. I will promote quarterly town hall meetings so people will always know what is going on in Pittsburgh. I will always be accountable. I will do what I say what I mean, and give my hometown 150%. I will strive every day to make Pittsburgh the best city it can be. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out on this rainy night. Thank you to Blake and Stephanie for putting this on, and thank you to everybody up here. We are a good bunch of people, and we all care about Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much. And Mr. McCubbin?
Okay, since Sarah called me out,
Sorry.
I'll give a shot at my narrative skills. The town that I grew up in didn't have a downtown area. It had a town square with a big historic courthouse in the middle, surrounded by large brick historical buildings. And riding the school bus to school, we crossed the town square every day. And as a kid, I looked around at these boarded up, forgotten buildings, and I always had it in my mind of what had been there previously and what I would hope to have seen in the future of, ice cream shops or the old movie theater being reopened, or restaurants and retail stores, and a place for people to go to and walk around and talk with each other and be a community. Fast forward to 2006, when I was driving down Broadway Street on my way to the move-in day at the university, that image flashed back into my mind. I looked at the historic buildings, and there were a few things, but it wasn't definitely not what it is today. And over the years, I've watched that development, and it's really coming back. And I commend everyone that works on that. Now that the momentum is growing on that, it's time that we broaden our focus out to the rest of the town and make sure that we can look at all other aspects of it. 30 seconds, right? I'll go back to my notes then. Coming in this evening, I'm sure most of you have your minds made up on at least one candidate, probably even two. There's no doubt that every candidate up here loves this city. We may each have different views and what we want from the city. And tonight you've heard all of our views. I hope this forum has helped you make your decision, and I hope that I have earned your votes. Quick shameless plug. McCubbinforCommissioner@yahoo.com. Email me. I'm Chad McCubbin, and I approve this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank our candidates tonight. Thank you again to our candidates. Thanks again to the City of Pittsburgh for hosting us. Thank you to Stephanie and the Morning Sun. And with that, we'll say good night, and be sure to vote on November 5th. Have a great night.
Oh, that's good. Why didn't I think about that?
And it's all.